the meeting to order, and we respectfully acknowledge that we live and work in Big Boggy as a steward of the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are all treaty people. And the agenda, is there anything anybody wants to add other than that on 5.3 public presentations, just so that it's on the agenda? That's what I have. Does anybody else have anything they want to add to the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda with the addition of 5.3.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Public input. People who do not have appointments. We have 15 minutes. Anybody wish to speak? Okay. Name and civic address. I just have to ask for it.
Yes. Ron Zink.
Yeah. She'll look after you.
Yes. Ron Zink. 116 Windsor Road.
Hey.
I got laying on the lake in
Spectacle Lake.
Spectacle Lake,
Yeah.
and I own 1,400 running feet of water frontage on that lake, plus 9 acres in the water, in between the survey lines, right?
Yeah.
And it's from the Windsor Road, it's about a mile back in the woods. You can see it on the horizon.
Yeah.
And from the Stamford's Lake Road, it's about a kilometer up to the lake. That's the location. And I would like to know if someone's gonna buy that part or whatever, because I would like to do something with it, because it's been 60 years or so since that footage was on, that's 500 feet, and it just keeps anybody that owns the land at obey that you can't do anything with in order to make any progress. And
what would you like to do?
with it, would have to be building, selling it, as far as lots or whatnot. Camping ground, somewhat of a golf course. There's 3.5 acres on the other side of that lake is within that 75 acres that I got. Yep.
Well, it's on our agenda for discussion today.
Yes, yeah.
I can't tell you what's going to happen.
No. But it's pretty much like you got us hostage, anybody that owns the land around it, because, like I say, it's been 60 years or so, and no one has been able to do any improving, or just about everything's improving by the time it's finished. Yeah.
Well, when it comes up for discussion,
Yeah.
we'll take your comments into consideration.
Yes, yeah. Thank you, then.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
That was the only hand I saw for that. Oh, sorry. Okay. Here we go.
Hi, I spoke last week. I'm here on behalf of my father, Ronald Burton, who lives at 259 Duncan Road on the lake. The problem that council faces is what to do with the watershed. To come to the best, most optimal solution, you got to understand what value this area, this 1,100 acres, holds for both the thirsty villagers and the landowners who feel shackled by the restrictions that have been placed on them, and they have a right to use the land that they own. But it's also a resource for every constituent of the municipality, however poorly it's harnessed right now. And in the planning committee report, councillors had questions about the completeness of the information available to them. Your gut was right to question. This is a complex problem, it's not a simple one. It's not as simple as it being a water source. The other 3 watersheds in the county of Lunenburg don't have the protections that have been in place here for 35 years. So I don't think we should be looking to them for best practices. What municipality did 35 years ago in buying up those cottages on the lake, buying up that land, putting these protections in place, that those decisions have been invested now for 35 years. And those decisions and those investments have grown. What the municipality has in those 1,100 acres is something special. I'm not qualified to tell you what the ecological value of that area is, what the value of having a dark space in the middle of your settlement area, right in the middle of exit 7, 8, and Stanford Lake, where these new communities are going to go in under the growth charter path to growth process. So the urgency that council feels to make a decision here is appropriate, but it needs to get the information in front of it to make an informed decision. And I don't think that information exists. So that information should be sought, and the first port of call should be talking to every single landowner who has land back there. Because if a big concern expressed last week between what was 2 very polarized groups, you had the thirsty villagers and you had the landowners, there's potentially, possibly options that exist in the middle. And without more information as to the ecological value, what ability is there to connect this area to the rest of the community via public access to the lake itself, via trails, connecting the lake to the rails to trail, that path that already exists and is already providing great value to the community. Though that information needs to be sought. And so when councillors question whether they have enough information in front of them to make a decision like this, their gut was right on, it was bang on. The urgency is real though. No consulting or engagement with stakeholders or landowners has taken place, none whatsoever. We didn't even get written notice. Engaging with every landowner to understand what it is that they want, and then taking that information and putting it into some sort of table where it's digested and summarized. Only then would you understand what the landowners want. And in lieu of that information, you're doing it in a vacuum, with the only benefit being, the limited public consultation that's existed and giving a few landowners the opportunity to get up and speak. I spoke last week about my family's willingness to talk to the municipality about public access. We're open to that. There's 22 acres, 21.5 of which is within 150 meters of the lake, and I can show you trail networks within our own lands that have been developed by an urban planning firm. I'm happy to share those. I own the domain Chester on the Lake, and if council showed initiative, collaboration, and the willingness to work with other groups to be a steward of the environment, like Ducks Unlimited, the Nature Conservancy Trust of Canada, the province of Nova Scotia, and their goal to protect 2% of all land. I think those possibilities exist, just no one's taken a step towards it. So I think it's incumbent upon council, before they make a decision, to actively engage with the landowners, because this is an opportunity. This is an 1,100 acre opportunity for the municipality and the landowners And it wouldn't be the municipality footing the bill for any infrastructure that might go in there to protect, provide greater public access to a resource, to protect the ecological value of the area. But it's incumbent on council to get that information before it makes those decisions. And it's to try and classify this as a simple issue, it is not. And council should do everything it can to have as much information in front of it as possible before it lets the proverbial genie out of the bottle. Because once you take this protection away, it's not coming back. And whether the 1,100 acres needs to be shrunk or whatever, you need to get expert opinion on what it is that you have, because you can't look to your neighbors as to what they're doing. They don't have this opportunity. They never had 1,100 acres of watershed protected. You know, your predecessors were seeing the future before the rest of us. They did something that was so far ahead of their time in the 90s to put these protections in place that to take them away now would be premature at best. And if you know, people more informed and educated on the issue than me had an opportunity to characterize what's happened and if this path is followed through to fruition and the watershed's taken away with the vacuum of information, how would that be characterized? How would that story be written? What would the headline look like? Versus the opportunity, if realized, you could have a municipal, provincial, not-for-profit collaboration that seeks to protect an area of ecological value, of what value with respect to water sources, and you would enrich the landowners. And the landowners want housing, they want value out of their land, and I think it is possible to achieve all of those things. It won't be easy, but it takes information, innovation, and collaboration, and I haven't seen any of those to date thus far. And I know with respect to my family, and I've spoken to Thornton Rhines, I believe we're the only two non-conforming users on the lake, and non-conforming users are the bane of municipality's existence. You don't like non-conforming users, and we're putting our hands up saying, talk to us, engage with us. Who else has submitted a development permit application under these onerous rules and been successful? I have. Why not talk to me about my experience and what I found to be ridiculous about that process? I'd be willing to have that conversation. No one's bothered to talk to me. So you haven't engaged with stakeholders, and to make a decision with the impact that this decision is going to have, and the inability to undo that decision once made, I think warrants serious questioning and investigation, and I plead with council to consider getting more information and actively engaging with landowners. And neither of those things have happened. This is about more than just a potential water source. This is about the largest area that the municipality has ever sought to protect. There's no other area that big. It is perhaps the single greatest ecological, environmental stewardship initiative the municipality has ever undertaken. And to undo it with a lack of information is premature and reckless, in my view. And I plead with council to seek more information, to engage with landowners, and be innovative, be creative, and be collaborative and bold. Thank you for allowing me a second chance to speak. I didn't feel like I did a complex matter justice when I spoke last week.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Barry Redmond, 4020 Highway number 3, Chester. I just wanted to say how disappointed I am in the timing and the lack of information that has gone into this whole process. Instead of having information sessions so that we can learn what either side is saying, we've had neighbor pitted against neighbor. I've worked with a lot of these people over the years I've been in Chester. They're my friends, but you're pitting me against them because I have a problem with what you're doing with the water situation in Chester. And I'm sorry, folks, but this was a water protection area for us. It has been touted as a water protection area for so long. When we came to discuss water issues in Chester, Spectacle Lake was our solution for the last vote we had. And so you can see what our concern is, and the timing is totally wrong to come up and try and push a decision like this on people when we have been trying and fighting against bylaw changes in the last year and a half or more, and have studies that show that density in Chester is a real issue, yet council pushes density and does not pay attention to the water issue, and at the same time they try and take away the only protected water area that we have. Of course we're going to be upset, but get this right. We did not have the information of the way that land has been passed down, and we are not against development in that area. We want to see a solution to this matter that will hopefully work for everybody. But the way this has been pitted again, and it just makes me so mad. It was good last week to hear everybody get up and speak, particularly the people and the landowners, and I applaud them for doing that, as Derek Wells did. It's too bad that he didn't show the same respect for us who have been fighting for our issues for the last year and a half. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else for the 15-minute session? Okay, we'll move along then. Council minutes, October the 10th. Errors or omissions, people?
Motion to approve circulation.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Public hearing minutes, October 10th.
I'll move we approve them.
Seconded?
Second.
Adela? Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Okay, what time is my first presentation?
Right now.
Shannon Black. Morning.
Morning. Thank you very much. Shannon Black, 65 Duke Street. So, I guess I would just like to preface what I have to say today with...
It's on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A statement of intent. So I am not here as a naysayer or to tear anybody down. I have come here repeatedly bringing evidence with me to try to share it with council to hopefully improve the quality of the decision-making at this table. That has been my intent. And in that, obviously I care a great deal about conflict of interest. It is a principle, a pillar of good governance. And that is why I keep coming back and talking about it, because it's not crap, as Mr. Wells said last week. It is very important to good governance and the reputation of this council.
I never used the word crap.
I'm sorry, I listened to it today. I'm pretty sure that's what you said. But in any case, I stand to be corrected with evidence. So in the interest of bringing information to council today, I have two matters I want to speak to. The first is the applicability of the statements of provincial interest. And the second is the actual creation of and operation of a provincial water area, which is the designation that came up last week as a possible replacement for the Protected Watershed Zone. There were representations made by the Chief Administrative Officer on this topic. There was acknowledgement or agreement from the municipal solicitor with respect to the statements of provincial interest, and I'm here today to correct what council was told by the CAO and supported by the municipal solicitor last week. Okay, so there's a statement of provincial interest on drinking water. And last week I submitted, and also so did another speaker, that that statement of provincial interest applies in this case. And the definition of a municipal water supply watershed in the statement of provincial interest, it was read out actually by the CAO, and she said that it does not apply here. It means an area encompassing a surface watershed or recharge area or a portion of it serving as a water supply area for a municipal water system. And the distinction was that there is not currently that Spectacle Lake is not currently serving a municipal water system. Okay, we know this. So in 2020, the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing published this document. It's called A Guidebook on Implementing the Statements of Provincial Interest. Okay. At section 3.0, drinking water, it sets out a 3.1 application of the statement of provincial interest. It states all existing surface watershed areas and those identified as future sources of drinking water for municipally owned or operated water utilities are subject to this statement of provincial interest. Okay, so it does apply, and it's important that council take that into consideration when making any kind of planning decisions, amending or removing the zoning. I read portions of that statement last week, and most importantly, I said that it gives, in my view, most importantly, it gives you the freedom and the authority to choose the environmental path here. Okay, so with respect to the environmental designation that came up, I would just point out, you know, this is the CAO's comments on this are set out pretty clearly in the minutes. Mr. Vino talked about this designation at length, and there is not a single mention of Mr. Vino's name in the minutes from the council meeting discussing this motion, but he spoke at length, as council is aware, as I pointed out in my email received this morning. Okay. And what is interesting about his submissions is that he didn't really ask questions about the water designation. He advised council about that designation, as did the CAO. So I just want to point out there is a guide published by Environment and Labor. It's called Designation of a Protected Water Area, PWA, and I believe that's what we were talking about last week. So this is the provincial designation, and this booklet is obviously available online. The table of contents says there's a section called What is a Designated Protected Water Area? And then there are a series of headings that say, designation is not land use zoning. Designation is not expropriation, and designation is not a source water protection plan. Okay? When you go into that section, it's on page 1. It points out that this process is actually designed for a water utility. It is not designed for municipal council to be relying on this designation. It is a water utility that receives this designation, and it is a designation that is enforced by a water utility. There is no water utility, and it ties in exactly to the interpretation of the definition of a municipal water supply in the provincial statement of provincial interest. We don't have a water utility.
No.
Now, this guide has a detailed flow chart about, how to create a water planning strategy. There are several steps, and it's insightful, and it's a great plan. The province has created it for municipalities to do a really thorough, careful job planning and protecting potential and existing watersheds. And this designation, this PWA, is one possible management option available to water utilities to protect or manage potential threats in the source water supply area. So the Minister of Environment is empowered to designate an area if requested by a water utility. It's also, I've already given you the summary, but basically that's on page 3. And what is talked about in this designation process is that this is one piece. It's an important piece for sure, but I think it used to be enough or considered enough on its own, but it's not anymore. And it's clearly stated in this document that it is part of a bigger piece, and that often outside experts are consulted for a municipality to develop a full strategy around water. Okay, so that's my research. And if there aren't any questions, I have a couple of things that I do want to say again. I want to request a recorded vote on this motion today. It's important that we know who is voting to remove the designated watershed zoning. If it passes, we need to know exactly which councillors voted to do that today, if that's what happens. And I also, I appreciate that everybody's here. I just really appreciate what other people have said today. And I know that people are here in good faith. But if there is a vote to remove the watershed zoning, it's important that the municipality inform in a very effective way everybody who owns property in that area about the appeal rights of individuals in the municipality. So that I know everybody's here in good faith, but it would be important to make sure that nothing irrevocable occurs as this is being possibly appealed if needed. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Peggy Wilson, we're almost at the right time for you.
Good morning, Peggy Wilson, 59 Main Street in Chester. Before I start, I'd like to just say that we're in a unique situation here today. It's the last day this council sits. I just want to acknowledge that we really do respect people who give community service, and it's very much appreciated. 2 of you will be very fortunate that you won't hear my voice again in the next session. The rest of you is yet to be determined. So after last week's meeting, I had many questions. But one of them that I think we can all ask ourselves is, what's the rush? Last week was an opportunity to hear from some landowners in the Protected Watershed Zone who know it well, and from people who fear the loss of Spectacle Lake as their only identified potable water source. I want to emphasize some landowners because last week people spoke about only hearing by word of mouth about the public hearing on the possible rezoning changes. What about the rest of the property owners within the Protected Watershed Zone? What about the other residents in the village of Chester who still don't know what is at stake? Shouldn't we want all of them to be informed? Right now, we have an opportunity to have meaningful conversation and come up with more information and possibilities. Moving forward, we have an opportunity to create positive change and to find middle ground. Property owners in the Protected Watershed Zone say that Spectacle Lake cannot serve as a water source for the village. This year, municipal staff have taken that position, but haven't provided any new information to support it. We know that the water levels are down this year. We also know that they were up last year. Is there a way to moderate the rainfall effects? Let's get an independent expert opinion. Property owners are feeling restricted. Let's focus on that. It's possible that watershed zone is too large. It's possible that the minimum lot size is larger than it needs to be. It's possible that the limit on uses is more restricted than it needs to be to protect the watershed. Let's get an independent expert opinion. Many residents were there to discuss their personal situations and how they see the protected watershed zoning preventing them from building homes for their families, affecting them in developing their land for their families. That's a limitation that we, as their neighbors in this municipality have to take very seriously and try to resolve. Flexibility to a few landowners does not require large subdivisions. Can there be variances given to some of the smaller landowners, while some protection for the watershed still is a potential? Let's get an independent expert opinion. Some people want the land in the Protected Watershed Zone to be open fully for development by returning the area to mixed-use general basic. What will this mean for the people just wanting to build homes for their children and their family members on their land in the woods they enjoyed as children? Opening the area up fully to development sacrifices not only its potential as a safe water source, with so much potential for the entire municipality, but also will alter the vision some landowners have for their family's future. We heard about the potential of a grand vision for a watershed. Do we have the vision to protect this area? What is the value of the potential conservation area? What would it look like? We don't know. Let's get an independent expert opinion. We are all at the table now. There's an opportunity to ask questions and engage the community and move forward in a way that does not set each other against each other. I presented to you last week a petition with 100 village property owners and resident signatures asking council to keep the protected watershed status. Also, Vaktada presented to you a letter and a petition with 60 signatures asking that the protection remain. Here in the village, we know we don't have enough water, and that finding enough water is more complicated than drilling deeper wells. Are we wrong to fear losing the only identified water source for the village when more and more wells are going dry every year? What groundwater or alternative surface water source would be better? We don't know. Let's get an independent expert opinion. After the meeting last week, I watched the video of September 12th council meeting where the motion was crafted for the public hearing. Option 1, presented by SAP, was the motion put forward to rezone the protected watershed to mixed use and general basic. Option 2 was the lakeside zone with 300 meter setback. At that time, some of you were for the lakeside zone, but Councillor Vino was incensed that the Municipal Planning Advisory Council had even suggested it. And here we are at a special council meeting at the 11th hour to vote on a motion that carries considerable consequences. I'm hoping during this past week that public interest has not been completely pushed from the forefront of your minds. We have an opportunity now for constructive public engagement that is effective, transparent, and constructive. Let's get some timely expert advice on how to make that happen so that we can collect the information we need to make the right decisions as we move forward. This certainly seems to be in everyone's best interest. Please make sure that whatever way you vote today, that private interests do not exceed the public need for safe water supply. If council votes today to remove the protected watershed zone, please make sure that property developers know that that decision is not final until the appeal process is concluded. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Six point one, consideration of amendment to the planning strategy and land use bylaw to rezone lands around Spectacle Lake from protected watershed zone to mixed use zone and general basic zone north of 103. I have a staff report.
Morning, Council.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So this is the, as was noted last week at the meeting, there was not time to prepare the report that was requested in the amount of time. So this is the report that was presented on the 12th, which, as just noted, that Council originally had given first reading to the staff recommendation to rezone to mixed use and general basic. Last week at the public hearing, my understanding is that no decision was made, so that was deferred until today. So I'm not sure exactly where that leaves us in terms of whether we are at a public hearing or whether it's council, but I'm here to answer any questions. The only new information that's been attached here is some policy and zoning information, just excerpts from the planning strategy and land use bylaw. I know last week there were some questions and discussion about the different zones and the differences between them and what would be allowed in one versus the other. So if that's helpful, we can certainly go through that. Yeah, I don't have a new presentation to give today.
No, I know, you didn't have enough time. It's just that straightforward. But I have, because I don't have these things memorized. Just so, assuming, and I'm not suggesting we are, but assuming we were to keep the 300-meter setback, what are people allowed to do within the 300-meter setback?
Sure, I think that's a good place to start. So just for clarity, what we're speaking of there, that was the recommendation that came from the Municipal Planning Advisory to implement the lakeside zone at 300 meters. So there's a couple of notes, and then I will happily go through. And the lakeside zone is attached in the package here. If you keep scrolling down, it's a blue color. But the issue that I see with that motion is that the 300 meters that was selected is not in conformance with policy in the planning strategy about the lakeside zone. The 300 meters was selected because that is what was used, the only other application of that zone, which is Sherbrooke Lake. Yeah. And in Sherbrooke Lake, we followed the policy, which is basically to do an analysis of the topography, the existing development pattern, existing road networks, and those kind of, there's a number of criteria.
None of which we've done here.
Right. So, and I don't think, not maliciously at all, the committee was looking for a compromise, much like council has been seeking. And so I think that's where they chose that 300 meters. But that would be my one note of caution with that particular motion, is that technically that is against the policy in the lakeside zone, which says that each lake is to be looked at individually. So it may be that 300 meters is the right distance, but it also could be more or less or different on one side. Like we just don't know because we haven't done that analysis. But to answer your question, Mr. Warden, so yes, the lakeside zone is what we have on the screen here. So if the zone was to be implemented at 300 meters or at some other distance, just the first note I would say is it is not a setback. So the lakeside zone is a zone. That means development can happen within it. So it's not that development has to be 300 meters back from the lake. That would actually be more restrictive. Today, the protected watershed zone makes you be 150 meters from the lake. So within that first 300 meters of the lake, these are the rules that would apply. So each lot would be allowed to develop up to 2 dwelling units via development permit. You can see there's setbacks there of 3 meters from each property line.
Yeah. So just so I understand fully.
Sure.
But if somebody owns 100 acres, they're allowed to divide it up into lots, or not?
Under the lakeside zone?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. If we were to rezone it to lakeside zone, yes. Currently under the protected watershed zone,
They are not. Well, right.
all new lots need to front on public roads.
Okay.
No new public roads are allowed to be built in the zone, and there are no existing public roads in the zone. So effectively, no subdivision is possible in the protected watershed zone as it exists today.
Currently exists.
Yes. So the lakeside zone, yes, does not have that prohibition. You would be able to subdivide and create new lots based on our typical subdivision bylaw, so private road or public road.
Yeah.
There is a minimum lot size in the zone of 1 acre, and that is to help limit the density, the number of potential developments that you'd have around the lake.
Yeah.
But yeah, so essentially what the lakeside zone is promoting is low density residential development on fairly large lots, which are generally assumed to be in areas that would not have access to any municipal services, so presumably they would be served by septic and well, hence the larger lot size. It really permits only small home-based business in terms of commercial uses.
No real commercial.
No real commercial and no industrial use of any sort. It also does another key feature of that zone, because water protection is a key. If you read the policy around the zone, water protection is one of the key reasons.
Rationales for this.
Yeah, is that so every property that borders the lake would have to maintain a 10-meter vegetative buffer. Yeah, so you basically have to keep the majority of the vegetation. There's specific language. You are allowed to have clearances to access the water, but you have to keep most of the natural vegetation in place there, and that's intended to slow down runoff and help with pollutants from reaching the lake. So yeah, the lakeside zone is a zone that was developed to enable low-density residential development around lakes while still having significantly more environmental protections than we do in all of our other zones. The protected watershed zone, I didn't create it, but my understanding from reading the history is that it was created to essentially halt or severely limit development in that area under the presumption that it may at some point be used as a water source. So different purposes between those two zones.
Yeah.
The other point, I guess, that I would also make is all of these changes would, or I think everything that's being considered would require a policy amendment to the municipal planning strategy maps. And so typically planning strategy amendments, well, not typically, planning strategy standards and comment to this are not appealable to the utility review board. Note that as well.
So, just one more question for me, because I know I want to find a middle ground, but I'm not 100% sure we're there. But we have that designated as a protected watershed zone?
It's zoned as protected watershed zone. We do not have a provincial designation
No.
for Nova Scotia environment.
But I guess I'm just trying to sort out in my head, like, if we change the zoning to allow some development, which I think is a reasonable thing, can we still maintain it as a watershed resource or whatever? I don't even know what.
So really, and I think this is what, it is not a water source right now.
No, I know it
We
is.
just have a zone with a color and a name that alludes to it being a potential water source.
Yeah.
It could have been called the no-go zone. It could have been called anything. And we do rezonings in other areas. So there's nothing different from this zone from another zone in terms of the I'm trying to think of another way to say the same thing, but so it is not a water source. And And as was mentioned in some of the public comments here, like it has never been registered with the province as a water source area or protected area. It was, and I agree with a lot of the comments. I think it was a good move in the 90s to implement the zone, because as was noted, it wouldn't have been protected in the same way if it wasn't. Where I differ is I agree, or I defer to our engineers and staff, and who have read all of the reports, taken everything into consideration, and concluded that, and you could argue the term viable, but based on who it's going to serve and what it is and what we're hearing and seeing there, so I think it was well intentioned at the time, but that doesn't mean that we should be encumbered by it forever if things change and new information is available and new analysis has been done, and a lot has changed since 1992, I think. So anyway.
I know I'm speaking a lot, and I'm going to let other people, but what I'm looking for is, on the one hand, because we don't have an identified other water source, people want, and I understand it, want us to maintain it as a potential water source, but also to relax the restrictions around it so that the homeowners or the people who own property can do something with it that doesn't have a negative impact on it. So like I don't know where that is, like what kind of what do
I suppose another option that hasn't really been discussed, I guess, a lot, would be to amend the protected watershed zone itself and open it up to some level of development, keep it in place. And that would be a different type of compromise than we've been talking about with the lakeside zone. In the jurisdictional review report, which we never actually was brought to council, or was discussed, I guess, based on how things went last week, I did try the previous week to take a look at it, and I looked at basically all of the mainland, so not Cape Breton, surface water sources in Nova Scotia, and whether or not they had zoning in place in addition to their provincial designation. Because we heard in Lunenburg County, the majority do not have additional zoning. Bridgewater actually is an interesting one. I found out after the fact that there is zoning for part of the lake, and then it just ends, and the rest of the lake is unzoned. So infer from that whatever you will. But basically across Nova Scotia, mainland Nova Scotia, surface water supplies, it was effectively 50-50. It was close. So, and it's really based is that most of the units are towns that have those sources, and then the water source is in the rural municipality adjacent to it. And so it depends if those rural municipalities have comprehensive zoning in place and have gone ahead with that. So there's areas of the province that do, and there's areas that don't, but it's not, yeah. And in doing that research, I didn't analyze each of those, the ones that did have zones. I didn't go through and do a full analysis of each zone, but I did look at a few, and there definitely are some that are similarly restrictive to ours, and there are many that are less restrictive, that do allow essentially almost like the lakeside zone, so low density residential development, no industry, no commercial uses, that kind of thing. So that would be an option that we haven't really talked about, would be to, make changes to the zone, to the protected watershed zone, so that it continues to serve its purpose and continues to stay around the 1,010 acres that it is. But we would have to debate what the appropriate level of development options would be, and that would be another way to look at it. Yeah.
I wish I knew what we had for a document that would allow that to take place. That's right. But I don't have it. I don't know. I don't know. I want to find a place where the people who own land can use it, and that the water source is still protected until we find a different solution to solve the water issue. But I don't know what it is.
So just have a question, I guess. Can pick up on those comments that you've made about potential water source, keeping it as a potential water source, and all of that. So I'm going to refer.
Just put your mic close.
Sorry, yeah, but I'm here at council. I'm directing it to the chair because he's speaking.
Okay.
So referring back to my question that I had last week, I'm going to ask it again. Does removing the protected watershed zone inhibit the lake being a potential water source? And the answer was no. Okay, just wanted to be clear on that. So when we're talking about a balance,
Yeah.
we're not taking away from the thirsty villagers, we're not removing that as a potential water source. We're not taking away the only protected water that we have right now. That was Mr. Redmond's comment. Again, I'm sure I'll be corrected after, but these are my notes, and I'm able to refer to them right now the way I've taken them. So yeah, no, I just want to be clear on that in my own mind, in terms of wherever we're going in terms of our decision here, that we're not taking it away as a potential water source.
No, and I guess another thing, just a comment, if we did go down that road, we could then ask for the provincial.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, or would that,
That's my understanding.
which basically keeps the motorized boats and things like that out, which we don't even have that in there now, do we?
There's motorized boats in that lake. Every year I'm in there putting gas
Yeah,
in
we
the
don't
tank.
regulate activities now.
No, and like we've said, there is no designation.
No, there is no provincial designation, yeah.
And as we said, like, there is the guidelines around designation of protected watershed areas done by NSE. As Ms. Black said today, that is generally done by a water utility.
Well, I know, we
It
don't
does
have
say
one.
for potential water sources, you could request that designation. So we haven't had those conversations with Nova Scotia Environment.
But we would be allowed to do that without a water utility?
That's what, we haven't had those conversations with Nova Scotia Environment. It says it can be requested by a water utility, so we do not have a water utility.
No.
Whether they would entertain that as a potential source, we're not sure.
Okay. Okay, other people have, I don't know.
Just one point of clarification. Barrett, just clarify for me. You said no subdivision can happen within a public road?
Correct,
There
yeah.
are no public roads, no ability to have a public road.
Right, yeah, that's right. So,
Any development can happen without a public road, just subdivision.
Development can occur on an existing lot today, subject to a set of stringent regulations that Mr. Burton referred to earlier.
And no subdivision.
Effectively, right, yes, that's my root analysis of it.
Within the protected watershed?
Yeah, as things sit today.
Yeah.
Because it's a little, you have to look at the land use bylaw and the planning strategy for it, which is not uncommon. But there's language in the land use bylaw to say only basically on existing lots, and then there's that have frontage on a public street, and then if you look in the policy, it says that no new roads are to be there. So you put those together, and it effectively means unless you have an existing lot, there's no ability to create new ones. They're
Basically a total prohibition,
virtually.
which is basically expropriation of no compensation.
I'll leave that to council to just.
No,
I mean, Mr. Ward, we have to do something.
I know we have to do something, I'm just.
Just for clarity, Garth, is it, so if there was say a lot was 50 acres, the way that the current zone is written, if it's an existing 50-acre lot, one dwelling unit on that lot. Is that correct? But it could not be subdivided because there is no public roads and subdivision has to occur on a public road. And there's no ability to create public roads. Just so it's not a total prohibition, it's
Right.
one dwelling unit on a lot, regardless of the size of that.
Yeah, the difficulty is creating new lots. That's.
Well, yeah, if you want to give one to your son and one to your daughter, then you can't do that.
Where do we get 4 dollars?
Well,
I don't want my kids living in around. I'm sure you guys' kids have moved over, but I do want to move mine out of my house someday. And having land with one house onto it ain't moving them out. It's adding pieces on.
yeah, I realize that. No, I can't have a debate, but yes, Floyd.
Just a couple questions. If we left the lakeside as it is and wanted to open it up for building homes, then we have to change bylaws. And what's the process for making those changes so people would still build on their lots Is that, I think I heard you say that was an option.
Yeah, I think I understand, I just want to make a correction, you said lakeside, you mean leave the existing zoning in place?
Leave the existing zoning in
Yeah,
place.
and amend it to
And
allow
amend
some
it
development?
To
Yeah,
allow development similar to lakeside.
yeah.
With new restrictions, and I think you said we'd have to change bylaws?
Well, no, that would be an amendment to the zone, yeah.
Just amend to the zone?
Yeah, so we'd amend the zone policy, just to clarify that it's no longer just purely about protection, it's also to allow limited development, and then we'd amend the zone itself, and we'd address some of those issues like around subdivision, allowing new roads.
Would that be allowed, I guess, from direction from council with consultation from the landowners? Would that be a process or not a process?
That would be not our usual process.
Okay. Would it be an allowable process?
But council could certainly direct staff to,
I think I guess, those protections are there for 35 years. I know these things take time, probably another year minimum to get some of those changes made, but I just see it as an option. I don't see a move forward here today unless we just get rid of it, and I don't think, personally for myself, I don't think that's what we want to do, or I don't want to do, personally.
To change that zone wouldn't take a year, we could do that in a couple months.
I don't know.
I mean,
So that's where we said last week, our normal process, we would, when somebody requests a rezoning and an amendment to the planning strategy and the land use bylaw, typically that's a
4 to 6
4
months
to
is what
6
we give them
month
as a ballpark.
process.
I'm not suggesting a rezoning. No, not a rezoning, I'm not suggesting, I'm just suggesting changes to the.
Same
But
thing.
it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the-
Whether it's a
it's a-
rezoning, a development agreement, all of our planning files, we
It's a-
estimate 4 to 6 months in part
4 to
because
6
of our
months.
public participation process and like the series of meetings that we have to hold and go to PAC and that kind of thing.
Well, we waited 35 years, I don't think 6 months is unreasonable.
Sure.
Is there anything we can do with the existing motion based on finding that compromise?
So
Or whatever we do, we're going to have to go back and start from scratch again?
I'm not clear on that, and I'll defer to Tara and Sam. My understanding is the public hearing was deferred, so it may be possible to make the decision you could have made last week, but anything else would have to be no.
So the public hearing was adjourned.
Yes.
A decision on the rezoning application, or the rezoning was
Right.
deferred to a special council meeting
Right.
today. So I think that, and Sam, I would look to you on this, I think that in effect puts us in a position where if council doesn't approve that today, I mean, it would be helpful for us to have a motion defeated to take that off. But there's no motion on the table per se. It was we gave first reading. There's been no motion for second reading. It would just die.
Yeah.
It would just die.
It would just die.
If you don't make a motion, it would die.
Just like
Or you make a motion to defeat it. But only this council can deal with it because the new council will not have been
Part of the public hearing.
Part of the public hearing process. So
you're back
either
to
by doing nothing or by doing a motion to defeat it, this council has to deal with it.
But I believe in terms of new options,
motion, new direction.
that would be, yeah.
Right,
we would
so
not-
we'd be back to redoing the public information session. Unless there was direction from council, it would normally go through the process of going back to the Municipal Planning Advisory Committee. Council has in the past said bring it back to council and let them directly deal with that. But it would have to go through another public hearing and all the advertising and all of that, if we didn't make a decision.
Well, I'm just looking for a method by which we can address the concerns of both parties and in some reasonable fashion. And I don't know precisely what to do to accomplish that.
In reality, we can't do that. I don't think we have any other option but to refer to the new council.
Well, I think that may well be the best bet at this point, because I can't solve this by tomorrow morning, I don't think.
And probably a number of,
But I want to fix it.
probably 3 or 4 of these people will be around.
Well, we've heard from a lot of people, and I want to come up with a solution that works.
But any solution we are going to suggest is going to require a new process.
Yes.
We cannot give the landowners what they need and still preserve what we need to preserve with this motion. I mean, in hindsight, we should have perhaps gone back to the lakeside zone right from the beginning. But we didn't, and here we are.
Can I just speak? I think there's a few things that we may need. Maybe we need a report from an outside professional to determine if that lake actually is suitable for water. We've had, CBCL tell us in 2018 that it was, and certainly our Public Works determined that since then something changed and it's not suitable. I'm kind of torn whether it is or not. I think maybe we need an outside qualified professional to determine that. I'm not comfortable just to remove the watershed, although I do appreciate the landowners wanting to use their property. I think we need to do something to accommodate that, and maybe I think we just need some more information. We need actually a water strategy. But I also think, landowners want to use their property. We have to do something to allow some activity that's, still be able to use the water if it's suitable. It may not even be suitable.
But reduce the restrictions somehow.
Exactly. So I don't know
I'm
how.
not allowed to speak, but I'm very confused. If you put a pipe in the lake and you take the water, because it's from fed, why couldn't you build around the lake like you want? In 35 years, you guys are still sitting in the same spot. It's pathetic. 35 years. You got a pipe and has a treatment plant, take the water, it's spring fed. Development around it, the rain still falls from the sky.
All the
It still
water.
runs into the lake.
I can't have a public debate.
This is a waste of our tax dollars, 35 years of it. I'm sitting here beating a goddamn dead horse. Over and over, and you can't make a decision, so we're gonna pass it on to the next council, and the next council, and the next council. I'll be dead by the time you guys make a decision.
I want to fix it. I just need somebody to tell me how.
Reduce the restrictions.
Respectfully, you have the report from the engineers.
You got a water source.
If you don't believe your
We're not
staff,
infilling the lake.
my recommendation would be to take Councillor Church's recommendation. If you don't trust what you've got from your staff, and clearly there's hesitation, then that is a reasonable option. It will take more time, it will cost more money, but clearly there's a reluctance here.
That's not fair to say we don't trust.
No, I don't. It's not that I don't trust them. Until we have another source, I'd like to know that at least it's a possibility, but I want people to be able to do more on their own land than they can now. And I just want that solution. Tina, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So thank you, Garth. Actually, I can say what I wish to say, and I agree with what Garth has just indicated. That's what I'm getting from the last number of meetings, since July 11th, I think, the public hearing down at Tuck Hall, another matter, public hearing. If I sit here and don't look to the staff, which I have for 12 years, what message is that? So Garth, I agree with what you just said. And also too, I cannot speak for other councillors, never would, never will, won't ever. I can speak for myself. And in my district and in my area, when there's been discussions around rezoning, change of use, however you want to envelope it up, again, I've always looked to the property owners of impact. That's all I've done and all I will continue to do. Again, I'm sure it doesn't amount to anything here, what I'm saying, but what I've said before, removing the protected watershed zone does not inhibit the lake or take it off the list of potential water sources. That, coupled with the fact of listening to the property owners, that's where I stand. That's where I stand, and I cannot speak for other councillors. Remind me again, Sherbrooke Lake and the property owners, I believe Mr. Zink, I didn't know where his civic was, but it's 116 Windsor Road. That's your area, I believe?
Yeah.
So the property owner, I'm just trying to get my head around who's speaking for what property owners here. And what I would do, and that's all I can do, taking away from the table today, so I can sleep tonight. But I just can't get my head around it.
Andre was next.
Yeah, sorry. Now, obviously, a divisive issue. Those around the lake, I've spoken to many of them. Many of them called me in the last few days to talk about this. What I'm concerned about is, as we try to come up with some sort of path forward, is that we engage in a long process. Not only is it frustrating, but the people around the lake, they're working people. And they don't have the ability to sustain this voice that we oftentimes in council react to. I'm very concerned that in the long term, if we drag this process out, that we won't get a balanced argument from those who address us. They just won't be able to sustain it, and it's not right because it's not just to those that can't. And so that's my primary concern as we consider how we're going to go forward here. If we do something long term, we're gonna lose the voice of those people.
Della, you for microphone?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I agree with Dean, and I've held a stance in form of consistency. When the group came in about the density issue in the village, I listened to everybody in that group. And I'm using the same logic. I listen to the people that own the land. And these people have suffered for 35 years. And I can't wrap my head around why the fact that the lake's not gonna mysteriously disappear. That's what I don't understand. If someone can give me a reason why, make it restrictive, like we can do, allow building. So in 20 years, if for some reason, magic reason or whatever reason, it looks as a viable source, we might look at it. I mean, we know what it costs roughly to pipe water in. I mean, I don't know how many dry wells there are in Chester. I know I have dry wells in my area. And I'm not advocating that we don't look at something for Chester, but I think it's only fair that the people in Western Shore or East River or New Ross or Hubbards have the same right. It's water. So I like to look at it through that lens. And I like to say, for me, I have residents in my area that took advantage of our well program to finance, if you have water issues, they'll finance to dig a different well. There's different options there for you. I mean, if I have a problem with my water, that's for me to address. I mean, I bought the property, certainly, I mean, I don't understand, like, I hear it all the time, but there's no water in Chester, but there's a gentleman that spoke that said he put cisterns in. Now, I don't know the fact that he put cisterns in. Did he explore digging his well deeper? Is that an option? I know the resident in my area, I spoke to him yesterday, that did had a new well drilled, and he has all kinds of water. Okay, so he took advantage of that program. So, I guess what I'm saying is if the residents feel strongly about water, I wouldn't wait for someone around to solve it for me. I do it myself, in my opinion.
Yeah, but you don't increase density and expect the water level to just keep rising.
We can't get in a debate that we're supposed to be, that part is over.
100,000 people in the municipality of Chester.
Yeah, I need to know.
So only 1,100 shouldn't have the voice.
They don't.
Okay.
That's okay. we need to come to a fair
Yeah.
solution here.
So I'm just wondering, is it a change to the watershed zone that would make the most sense? Or just removing it and putting in the 300-meter setback would make the most sense? That's what I'm trying to get my head around.
I have a question about that process.
Yeah.
If we, because all the public information session and all of the procedural things we had to do to get to this point was around changing it to mixed use, general basic, which is because we believe the engineering reports that were presented to us. That's what led us down this road. As we usually do, we usually believe our engineers' reports. If we approved the mixed use zone and then immediately we gave notice to apply the lakeside zone, does that not then give, because you've given notice, then automatically give you the protections of the lakeside zone now? How does that work?
So it's first reading that gives that, I believe.
We'd have to determine what it is.
And you'd have to determine where that lakeside zone applies. So in the protected watershed zone, where does the lakeside zone apply specifically? And what about the areas that are not covered by the lakeside zone? So are you thinking of applying it, like that's part of the discussion where we need to come back with a staff report, is within that big green watershed protection zone, where does are you replacing that whole zone with the lakeside zone? Are you looking at, you need more analysis on that, I think.
Yeah.
You could give directions to staff to do that.
Yeah, I think, just to follow that, I think that there would be a gap until we got to first reading. We could definitely go down that route, but there would be that gap until we could get the staff analysis done on the lakes.
Kind of gap.
How long would it take you? Or, I mean, that's...
So council, what about all the other stuff? That's the question.
I know.
Yeah. No, but legitimately, if this is top priority, if this is number one, couple of months. We got to do a PIM, a public information meeting, and we have to come to PAC. But I mean, I can go back to my desk and start the analysis on the lakeside zone.
If you bypass PAC, would we be able to have it by the end of November?
Yes, if it's priority number one. Yep.
And that would be to come to council for first reading. We would still have to go through advertising for a public hearing, going through the public hearing and all of that.
And that means, and just as a reminder, that means village plan review is no longer number one. I'm just, because you hear that every day. That
only delay it, I mean, I don't know.
No, I just want us to be.
I want a solution.
Just keep it light.
Thank you. So first off, Eric, you'll never hear from me, get back to village plan review, right? You'll never hear that from me as a top priority. I'm just being honest. I'm sure I will get emails and phone calls. But we went through that, and we've got a long list of strategic priorities. You've got a long list on your desk that I'm not even aware of. So again, we went to part one and part two of the public hearing in terms of that village plan review. And for now, I know we're going to get to it. Okay, so lakeside zone, what areas within our municipality besides Sherbrooke Lake, is there one in, what lakes have lakeside zone?
So it's just Sherbrooke Lake right now.
Okay.
There was a request on Solar Lake, exit 6 there in Hubbards, and that went through the process and then ultimately got withdrawn at the very last moment by the applicant.
Okay, so when you talk about what areas of the lake, what components, and is it 300 meters or is it something in between there? Sherbrooke Lake, the land that's within our municipality, it's all the same setback.
Correct.
So I wouldn't think, in my pea brain here, that we're going to be looking at anything other than the same meter setback around the entirety of the lake. So are you telling me that we could have actually on Sherbrooke Lake looked at 50 meters here, 300 meters there? Is that what could have happened at the end of that discussion?
I'm not. Without taking a look at the policy closely, I think it alludes to that it would normally be the same around. But that's it. If there was in a specific case, if there was a strong reason, like a hill, like a ridge line, that made it so there's no sense going beyond that because the water's going to drain this way. That maybe, but generally the way it was done at Sherbrooke and the way it was proposed here that it would be the same extent around it, I think, unless there was a reason.
Thank you. Second question.
Sorry, can I just add to that? The policy says that the lakeside zone shall have flexibility when defining boundaries based on council's site-specific decisions.
Right, so if there was a,
So on individual lakes,
That's what it
going
says.
forward, we can look at,
We could say 200, 600, whatever we wanted.
Well, I think what she's
Based
referring
on-
to is on one side of the lake, it might make sense that it's a 300 meter
Depend on the
area.
topography.
It's not a setback, right? It's a zone. So the zone would follow property boundaries that are approximately in that 300 meters, and on the other side, it might make sense that it's reduced.
second question is, when we give first reading and then publicly advertise that first reading in a provincial media or provincial, I'm thinking back of when we did the public access on Sherbrooke Lake, which was land that we owned. It was my understanding that when we gave first reading, at the end of that council meeting, an ad was placed in the Chronicle Herald, which came out the next day, and as of that point of the public ad, it was virtually at a standstill, no development, no applications could be received. And if I remember, the District of Lunenburg came in before 4:30 that day, that we had a council meeting and put something on the counter, which would then have allowed them to move forward with their development, which is what happened. I'm just trying to say.
It's upon, once council gives first reading, once it's advertised in the paper, that's when it takes effect. It's not a prohibition, it's not a ban on development.
Sure.
It's, as I explained last week, that any development permits that are issued cannot be inconsistent with both the old and the new.
That's right.
So it has to be consistent with both the old and the new.
So in terms of a first reading, again, we don't have to look at our weekly paper, we can look at if we still have a Chronicle Herald, I don't even know, but.
And that's what we did last time,
That's
you're
right.
right. So the publishing, it doesn't say we have to advertise in a provincial paper, it says we have to advertise in a paper circulated
in the area.
And so in that case, we looked at which papers had the fastest advertising opportunity, and we put it in the Chronicle at that time,
Okay.
Yes, Blake?
Yeah, we're going in circles.
No, I know that.
I think we need to make a decision one way or another, and I'm gonna make a motion to approve amendments to the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaws to rezone lands around Speckle Lake from protected water zone to mixed use zone, south of Highway 103 and general basic zone, north of Highway 103.
Is that with the 300 meter?
This is the one we approved.
It's the one from the public hearing last week.
It's the one from the public hearing from last week.
It's the one you can approve today.
That's the one we can approve today. We either gotta approve it or defeat it, in my mind, one way or the other. Instead of talking, we can do. I guess if we approve it, it's that way. If there's other changes we need to make, we can do that after the fact.
So we can make a motion after the fact to also place the 300 meter setback in place?
To begin to come back and report ASAP to
Take a look at it.
do an analysis of where the lakeside zone should apply around Speckle Lake. Yeah.
I'll second that. Yeah, after the motion, or no?
No, it's not a motion.
No.
That'd be a second. Moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. So is somebody prepared to make a motion that what's the motion I would require to do the lakeside zone?
It's a motion to direct staff to come back with a report on the application of the lakeside zone. And if you want to put a timeline around that, you could let it come back.
I'd like to have it 2 months. No longer.
And we're gonna bypass.
And bypass, yes,
PUC.
and to bypass PUC and bring it back to.
Yes,
Speed it up, yeah.
but I think we should send out a notification to the affected property owners that it's taken place.
Yeah, we got that.
So hold a PIM, notify the affected property owners.
Yeah, and then bring it back to council.
That's what the direction would be. So it's direction
I
to
just have a
staff. We'll take a
question.
motion on it though.
Just to Ms. Black's suggestion that it was a recorded vote, I just want to make sure.
Vote's already done. Vote's already done. Vote's already done.
Okay.
Council didn't ask me for a recording, but
So what do we need a motion
to get staff to do a report on the lakeside zone and
Special Lake?
So motion to direct staff to come back within 2 months with a report on the application of the lakeside zone
On Spectacle Lake.
and to hold a public information meeting where we advertise it or where we notify the property owners
Well, at least
and to bring that directly back to council.
So moved.
So that's what the motion would be.
we have a seconder. Second. Discussion.
Yes, I'd just like this, do you need that in the motion about bypassing MPAC?
Yes.
I'm on the committee.
Well, that's on it.
That's on the motion?
Yeah, that's just to give staff the,
Yep.
give them,
Oh, we gotta do something.
all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. So is part of that process gonna be to take a look at the topography and
Yes.
all that kind of
Yes,
stuff?
we will, that's what we'll do in that
Which
report.
makes sense and which doesn't make sense?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
He's got gray hair, bud.
You got great.
At the lakeside.
okay, we're gonna take a little break.
Yeah, I just want to.
Yeah. We're gonna take a 10-minute break and then we do have a couple of in-camera matters. Well,
One personnel?
and one is gonna deal with conflict of interest, which you may not wanna say. But I just gotta deal with it.